Hey, fellow babies, welcome back to Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. I hope that you are Patreon patron. You're getting this as real time as possible. It's only a couple bucks a month. If you can afford it, we'd really appreciate it. If you can't afford it, you're getting it a week late on YouTube. And at a minimum, if you are an Amazon Prime member, would you please remember to link your Amazon Prime account with your Twitch account, Twitch Prime, and we will get a couple bucks that cost you nothing because you're already paying for it on Amazon Prime. This week, our first question from YouTube from Jared Barzee or Barzee. What's your take on the Activision Blizzard and China scandal? How should American companies deal with interests in China? How will it affect Activision Blizzard's bottom line? How would you have handled the situation? Let's be real here. The U.S. and most Western countries have something in the U.S. is First Amendment rights. So the First Amendment of the Constitution says people can say what they want. And dissent is tolerated and in many places encouraged. And it creates an open civil discourse. So in the U.S., if I want to say Donald Trump is the orange menace, I can say that, and I'm not going to jail, and nothing bad's going to happen to me except I'll lose a few Twitter followers. But in China, they don't have a First Amendment. They don't have a multi-party system. The government is the same party forever. The people don't actually have a choice. And the government likes to crack down on all dissent. So back in 1997, and I only learned this like in the last several weeks, the 100-year or 99-year lease that was granted to England, the United Kingdom, for Hong Kong expired, and the UK, as part of the exit, negotiated that Hong Kong would remain a so-called free zone and the people would be allowed to travel and do other things. And apparently the government of China, the People's Republic, has been cracking down on Hong Kong rights. So we've got all these people, free Hong Kong, they want to be separate. It's too bad. It's not realistic. They should have left in 1997 if they didn't want to be subject to Chinese rule. And the fact of the matter is they are subject to Chinese rule. So, you know, we in the West who think it's okay to criticize the president if we don't like him, or to call, liberals, socialists or leftists, we're allowed to do that if we want to have a view that's different from the party in power. They're not in China. And so when Blitzchung spoke out, and while being interviewed, and I assume in Chinese, by the local interviewers, he said free Hong Kong and Hong Kong great, whatever. And Blizzard started out by taking away his prize money and banning him for life. Then I believe it was about a week later, they posted a blog and said, we acted too harshly, we're giving his money back, and he's suspended for 6 months. I think it was that. But the mistake they made was they made the statement, this is not political. This is because we're trying to be purists and have our game channels for gamers only, and political commentary is inappropriate, and we wouldn't have cared if he had said the other, the People's Republic is entirely justified and they should nuke Hong Kong. We still would have banned him and, whatever.
We moved too quickly in our decision making, and then, to make matters worse, we were too slow to talk with all of you.
I think that's somewhat disingenuous. So to be perfectly honest, if you want to do business with a totalitarian regime, and China is a totalitarian regime, you live by their rules. And if you don't want to live by their rules, don't do business there. So there are companies like Google who have chosen to do no business or less business in China because the Chinese want to censor what Google can deliver, what ads they can deliver, and what searches people can do. And so they pulled out years ago. There are companies like Facebook who are banned from being in China, but if they were there, they'd operate under really odd rules because, Chinese want to censor posts by individuals, and not just Chinese individuals. They want to, censor U.S. individuals who might have relatives in China or friends in China, and it just doesn't work. It's hard. Amazon's not there, partly because the government will let them in, but Activision Blizzard is there. and generates quite a bit of revenue there. So if you want to do business there, you play by the rules. So I doubt that the Chinese government reached out to Blizzard and said, you've got to beat up on this poor BlizzardChina guy because he spoke out. I think that Blizzard did it partly because they want to get along with the Chinese, and they have games in the pipeline like Diablo Immortal that hasn't been approved yet. They would really like to come out in China. So I understand the business motivation for it. I think that this issue was probably addressed best by Reed Hastings at Netflix this past week, just a couple days ago. There's a comedian, I want to say Hassan Minhaj, I think that's how you say his name, Hassan Minhaj, who had a comedy show on Netflix, and it's like stand-up comedy thing, and he did a whole piece on how oppressive the Saudi Arabian regime was, and Saudi Arabia asked Netflix to take it down, and they did. And when Reed Hastings was questioned about that, he's the CEO of Netflix, he said, we're not in the speak truth to power business, we're in the entertainment business. I think that's right. So, the last question, would I have handled it, or how would I have handled it, the situation? I probably would never have banned the guy. I certainly would never have taken his money away, which they gave back, so clearly they regret that. I think I would have reached out to the guy and said privately, do us a favor, please, and don't speak politics on our station, and I would have done that privately. And if you do it in the future, we're not going to let you play in our league again. I think that would have been an appropriate way to handle it. Warn the guy. I would have warned the announcers, if somebody starts speaking politically, cut them off, turn the mic off, interrupt them, and I think you have to do that to get along in China. Do I support the people in Hong Kong? Yes, of course. Like I would love everybody in the world to be free, but the fact is that we are not going to change China by having a video game company stand up to the government and tell them they're wrong. These are the same people who were like running over protesters with tanks in Tiananmen Square 30 years ago, 35 years ago. They don't care. And I think a young protester was shot in the chest by a policeman, and he was carrying like a banner. But didn't have any weapons. He wasn't threatening. I don't think he died. I think he lived. But they don't care. They want to make sure everybody supports the government, and that's just what totalitarian regimes do. And I'm not sure it's a lot better in other countries that are, totalitarian, but that's why the U.S. is such a popular place to live, because we tolerate dissent. And so I think we need to, we need to treasure what we have, the right to speak out and have a show like this. And I say what I think, and I've never had anybody from the government contact me and say that's inappropriate, and I never will. I actually just spoke to Activision yesterday, as it happens. They reported yesterday, and I don't remember what I said, but they said they watched one of these, Pachter Factors, and they really appreciate how I explained something that they were doing. So I'm sure it was about a game or whatever, but they thought I was really insightful, and it was the president of Activision, Cody Johnson. So hope he doesn't watch this and bitch at me for saying they did it wrong. Our next question from Patreon, from David Sobigraj. Why did you think that the ESA E3 data breach for journalists isn't a big deal? Correct me if I'm wrong, but your data wasn't leaked since you're not a journalist, but don't you think a complete lack of data protection on an open website is a major breach of trust? My data was leaked.
Was it?
It was. And I have a password. I'm not going to say it on air because I don't feel like having you hack my shit. I have a password on air that I use for things that don't matter to me. So I wouldn't use it for banking, or for like a subscription that I have, like I pay for the Washington Post. But I use it for just everything I register for. So like E3, and it's just always the same password. It's easy. And I've been getting spam emails lately addressed to Michael Pachter - that password.
What?
Wow. And and I don't know that they got it from the ESA, because I've used it for literally 100 things. Anything you register for that is just like something stupid that you don't care about, that you don't pay for. Anyway, so it's out. The reason I don't care is you clearly haven't filled out an E3 application, but they don't ask for your driver's license number, your social security number, or your bank information.
They say you have to turn in your driver's license.
That data wasn't in the breach.
Ah.
The breach is your email, your password, possibly your cell phone number. That's it. You know what? My cell phone number is on every note I write, so I really give a shit. My email's on every note I write. Literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have access to both of those things. And so what I said, because I had some clown on Twitter, and I don't remember who it was, take me on, a journalist, saying, they were like, I don't know why you don't think it's a big deal. It's a huge deal for me. You know, I'm getting spammed. And I'm like, what's on there? Like, for real. What? You found me and you're now hassling me on Twitter because you didn't know I was on Twitter before? That's bullshit. Sorry. Oh, I'm getting spam emails? Hey, guess what? Put it in the junk folder and you won't get any more from those people. Like, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard that people are worried about their email address getting out. Oh my God. By the way, my email, go ahead and send me one. michael.pachter@webbush.com. I get harassed just as much as anybody.
I'm not worried so much about my email address. It's my phone number. Because some dude who just doesn't like me because I didn't review a game the way that he liked can call me on my phone.
Yeah, I don't answer calls. I don't know who the caller is. I don't give a shit. Go into voicemail.
I'm just saying. I'm a journalist who lost his info at that data breach, and it does bother me, and it does concern me.
Is it a major breach of trust? Sure. Were they sloppy? Yes. Did they get hacked? Yes. Should they be sorry? Yes. So I'm not saying that we should just turn the other cheek and forgive them. I'm not saying it's not a major breach of trust. That's a great question. But being a major breach of trust doesn't make it a big deal. Like, and I got to say, I'm a baby boomer. Like, my generation, we're just tougher than you guys. That's why we don't care. I don't care.
Okay, boomer.
All right, our next question from Patreon from Mark Spellman. How do you think Microsoft struck a deal with Take-Two to make the Outer Worlds available on Xbox Game Pass on launch day? Microsoft now owns its developer Obsidian. How would that purchase give Microsoft special considerations for a game that was in development for several years prior? Obsidian owns the title, and Obsidian clearly had a publishing deal with Take-Two, and Take-Two has a label called Private Division. And Obsidian, I'm sure, said in its contract with Take-Two, we will publish the game for Xbox and PlayStation. I am sure that once Microsoft purchased Obsidian, they approached Take-Two and said, we'd really like it on Game Pass. And I'm sure Take-Two said, but if we let it on Game Pass, we'll lose some number of units of sales on Xbox. Let's just pretend 1 million. We don't know, but that's a good number. So Take-Two said, we'll lose $50 million of revenue, and our profit split with Obsidian is, whatever, 60-40 us. And we'd make $20 million. And if that's the number, then Microsoft wrote them a check for $20 million, and that was the end of it. That's just how it works. Microsoft can't buy a company that's already got a signed publishing agreement with the third party and then change the terms. They can't. They have to negotiate it. Now, if Take-Two went to a Microsoft game studio now, in Exile or Ninja Theory, and said we want to publish Hellblade 2 under the Take-Two label, Microsoft could say no, it can't be on PlayStation, or it's going to be on Game Pass day one, because that's the contract they would develop in order to obtain the publishing rights. But the deal with Obsidian clearly contemplated multi-platform and wide availability at launch. And if Microsoft impaired the potential for Take-Two to make sales on Xbox, they would compensate Take-Two, period. So I'm sure Take-Two got paid, and I'm sure they're very happy with what they got paid. And honestly, the game was great. So everybody should have won. The real open question is, unlike other Microsoft first-party titles that are going to be on Game Pass on day one and stay there, like Gears of War and Halo Infinite, unlike those games that will probably always be on Game Pass, there are probably limited time games like this one. My guess is Outer Worlds will disappear from Game Pass after a couple of months so that Take-Two can get the catalog sales, because they bought that. They negotiated that with Obsidian up front. But since Microsoft owns Obsidian, all the share that Take-Two is giving to Obsidian is actually now going to Microsoft. So Microsoft didn't really have to pay Take-Two. Microsoft could have said, here's what we'll do. Put it on Game Pass and we'll cut the royalty you pay us in half. Again, I'm making that up. So there's plenty of ways Microsoft could compensate Take-Two that is a win-win for both companies. And I think it was important to Microsoft to have a studio that they just bought on Game Pass at launch. And I think it was probably good for Take-Two. So again, how do they do it? Money talks. Bullshit walks. Our last question this week from Patreon from Talon. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is being sold on Steam, but it will ultimately run on EA's Origin service. EA stopped cross-selling on Steam sometime after Mass Effect 2 was released. Why did it come back? The truth is that Activision and EA each developed their capability to sell PC games exclusively around the same time back in last decade. And EA was never a PC game powerhouse, but they had some good PC games, Command and Conquer kind of stuff. Sims, they had some big PC games. Blizzard clearly has had much bigger PC games with Diablo and StarCraft and Warcraft and World of Warcraft. And so they developed Battle.net. So Battle.net became the way that Activision distributed all games. Call of Duty on PC goes through Battle.net. And EA did the same thing with EA Access, or EA Origin, excuse me. And then Steam kind of just developed sneakily. They were in the 2003 timeframe, I think. That's when they kind of started. But they didn't become dominant until late in the decade. And I think EA and Activision thought, screw it, we're not paying them 30%. I think that's what it really came down to. The Epic Store has emerged with a 12% royalty. And I kind of think that EA went to Valve and said, how about if you put Jedi Fallen Order on Steam and we'll pay a 12% royalty, or even 20, but something less than 30. And I kind of think that Valve is trying to fight back against Epic. So I think you're going to see one-off deals like this. And I could even see EA say, if you put it on Steam and charge us 12, you can have all our PC games going forward. Now the 12, there's some method to that 12%. Epic has a cost. It costs money to build out the infrastructure and deliver PC games. And my guess is Epic is pricing it at cost because they're trying to take over some share. Valve has all the investment already, so their incremental cost is zero. They spent the hundreds of millions of dollars to develop the architecture to deliver all this shit. So they're probably making 12% incremental. EA is looking at this as, hey, this is just more sales. You guys have a giant audience. It's just like putting it in a box on a retail shelf. And so that's why I said they might even be paying as much as 20. Yes, 90+% of PC games are downloaded, but if EA thinks it can sell an extra 1 million units to Steam customers, it's going to do it. So I think it really is one of those things where Steam is valuable because Steam delivers an audience. EA has a licensed IP that's a big game for them, and very likely is going to be a highly rated game. And I think this is just one of those things that everything meshed perfectly and it made perfect sense. And Valve is trying to prove, that Steam is better than the Epic Store, and they're fighting off competition. Ultimately, I think EA would be smart just to get rid of Origin. They don't need it. If it's only 12%, put all your games on Epic and Steam and be done with it, and let them have their 12% and get rid of all the infrastructure that you have to deliver, because you just don't need it. Thanks for joining us on this week's Pachter Factor. Again, if you're a Patreon patron, we appreciate it. If you are not, please try to remember to link your Amazon Prime account with your Twitch Prime account. And if you can't figure out either of those, follow me on Twitter @Michael Pachter. Come find me on Empires and Puzzles. I will kick your ass because I actually am the best player in the world. Okay, was that responsive? That's as much as I got.
I don't know that it's really an answer, but
Why? I don't
your
think
answer?
I don't think it's a big deal. And my
I
date.
do. My data's
Good.
out there. People
Good.
can call me. They know where I live now. They have your address too.
Yeah, I don't know how often you publicize your phone number. Mine's on every single email
I
I've
never
ever
do.
sent.
Most
okay.
people don't.
Mine's on every email I've ever sent. And
No,
I
but
don't.
that's just you want that person to have your phone number.
I
These
want
are
every-
millions of people who you do not want to have your phone
No,
number.
the millions of people aren't accessing the breach. The 3 or 4 bad actors are. Not a million.
It's out there. I can go download it right now.
No, the ESA pulled it down
You
apparently.
can't. The data's out there. It's gone.
Great. Don't care. They can have it.
Wait, I'm just saying, if you were trying to satisfy your critics with your answer to this, you did it.
Good. Don't care.
Okay.
I'll get over it.
All right.